to be back at the school. I was slightly concerned with the huge cheer that the other side got as they walked into the room. And of course, you were completely silent when I walked in, that actually maybe this debate was going to be a bit one-sided. But it's a real pleasure to debating something which is actually going to affect you more than it will us or fossils or dinosaurs here. Because this is about Britain's place in the world and the next generation and how you embark and how you involve yourselves with the world around you. So whilst maybe many of you can't vote here now, you have an effect on your parents, which is they can vote, but also you have a direct interest in the result, because the result, either way, will have huge consequences for Britain. Now, because of this debate, and because of the debate, the manner of this debate over the last 10 years with a Eurosceptic press, which spends a lot of time just having a bash at Brussels, blaming Brussels for this, that, and the other, most of us are growing up with this idea that somehow we're latched on to an organisation and we don't really know much about it, but we blame it for all sorts of things when things go wrong. One good thing about this debate is that it has allowed us to better understand exactly what the EU does, and perhaps also look at ourselves and why we have not done more to make it a better machine than it currently is. Now I'm going to roll back a few centuries and just to say what Britain's place is in the world. And for me it comes back to one interesting decision made by Queen Elizabeth I. Queen Elizabeth I, shall I just pause it, please? Queen Elizabeth I made a gargantuan decision which she probably didn't think was very important at the time. She allowed any of the ships that were wandering around the world to keep the bounty. Now, when you see these films, when they go and hit another pirate ship, or when they hit another Spanish ship, or when they go on land, they planted the British flag, but they were able to keep a lot of the bounty themselves. It was called the prize. And the reason why that decision is so important today is that it meant that all these ships, including people like Francis Drake and so on, who wasn't in the Navy himself, he was a pirateer. But he ran around sticking the British flag, or the English flag as it then was, all the way around the world, claiming territory. And ever since then, because that continued on within Portugal and Spain, anything, all the loot that they got had to go back to the state. So it meant that our space, our interest, our places we traded with, ever since the 16th century, has grown and grown and grown and made us what we are today. And at the height of it, in the Victorian times, this phrase that the sun never shone, never set on the empire was exactly true, because from India to Canada, the United States, right across the world, there was British influence. And those connections remain today. We have always been an outward-looking country that's looked at by other countries around the world to make bold decisions. But when it comes to the EU, it does seem to me that we've lost our mojo here a little bit. Now, it's worth explaining exactly what happened there. After the Second World War, we told France and Germany, you can never go to war again. You've done it twice in 1 century. You need to involve yourselves, immerse yourself, become interdependent with each other. And at that point, Europe was a complete mess. There was no trading to be done whatsoever. We had the Commonwealth. We had the United States, so we were trading with them. And slowly but surely, they grafted, they worked away, they created this European platform of coal and steel trade, and it developed and developed and developed. It's now developed into the biggest single market in the world. Bigger than the United States, bigger than Japan and all over there in Russia and so forth, the biggest in the world. But we didn't join straight away, partly because Charles de Gaulle, the French, said no. They prevented us from joining in the 1950s. And until he died, we then finally got membership. But we were joining come lately. We were like having country club membership of this organization that we, with our pride, are normally at the front of. We normally set these organizations up, like the United Nations or the OECD or the IMF, but not the EU or the EC as it then was. So we've always had this backward approach of looking at this arm's length approach of the European Union. It has developed, as I say, into a powerful organization, but it has got huge flaws in it. It's not democratic, it's not accountable, and it's not as competitive as it should be, bearing in mind the 500 million people that are in there. We have been lazy at actually affecting rules that come together, that are formed in Brussels and then spat out like a sausage machine We complain about the end result, but we don't get involved in talking about the ingredients. And that has changed under David Cameron, who's gone in there and used his veto to protect our financial services and has got involved in the discussions to make the EU far more competitive. It's got 2 parliaments, for goodness sake, 2 European parliaments, 2 buildings that they oscillate from. That's a complete waste of money. In fact, let's get rid of European parliamentarians completely and send us politicians there. There are so many ways that we can make the EU better. But the point is that it is a club and there's a cost to it. There's compromise that comes with any organisation. Absolutely, there is a compromise. And yes, it costs a little bit of money. But the exposure that we get, financial services, digital, from education, health, right across the board, that allows Britain to trade, provides far more money than it comes into the country than we actually spend on getting out of it. The cost of membership is less than 1% of GDP. It costs each of your parents 26p a day to be a member of the European Union. You save that money on the roaming fees that have been reduced when you now go abroad. You save more than that money on the airlines, the reduction in the airline prices, because we've collectively come together. And whilst many of us genuinely do not know what will happen if we leave the EU, we can say that we will lose a lot of that activity, a lot of that connectivity, and that influence. And you may hear in a few minutes, we'll sign up and get another agreement. Canada have taken 10 years to get their agreement. It's not even signed yet. So whilst the European Union will want us back in, France, bearing in mind they kept us out, they won't be there quick enough to say, let's sign them up. Italy, they make boats as well. We make Sunseekers here, down the road from here. Do you think the Italian members of parliament will be keen to allow Britain back in? They'll be defending their own boat makers, and we'll see that repeated right across the board. There is a huge danger in us leaving and losing that influence. We are an international focused country. We need to remain at the top of our game, and we need to get better at influencing the European Union. Thank you very much indeed.
If I could invite the Leave side to the floor, please. Lenny.
Good afternoon. Today I'm going to tell you why we need to vote Leave on Thursday. We need to take back control of migration into the UK and to limit numbers of migrants who come into the country. In order to get down to the amount that the Conservatives said they would in their 2015 manifesto, we need to vote Leave. Everyone says we're against migration. I'm in fact in favour of controlled migration, where the people who migrate to the UK are the ones with the skills that we need in order to help our economy. If we leave, we can control who it is that comes here and how many people migrate here. At the moment, we have criminals here that we can't deport due to EU law, and people with terrorist pasts that we can't stop from coming here. In order to increase security and our safety, we need to vote Leave. If we leave, we will be able to introduce an Australian-style points-based system where we can decide the numbers, who can come here, and the basis on which they come. If migration continues at the current rate, we won't be able to support migrants. The only reason that countries such as Australia and Canada can do so is due to the fact that they control numbers. If we remain in the EU, there are hundreds of millions of people who can come here, and we simply can't cope. People may argue we're being discriminatory by wanting to limit who comes here, but surely at the moment we're actually doing the opposite, as more Europeans are able to come here than any other nationality. So we are actually currently discriminating against those from outside the EU, from countries such as China and India, that are more highly skilled than those from inside the EU and want to work but find it a lot harder to do so due to needing to get work visas, etc. One of the key arguments that have been put forward by the Remain camp is that it will be better for our economy. However, as we've actually seen, this is quite evidently wrong. Since ONS have admitted that 80%, yes 80% of our economy is actually not to do with trade, meaning that leaving the single market will not have that drastic of an impact on our economy. The EU currently has the lowest growth rate, even lower than Antarctica. Britain is the 5th largest economy in the world, with seats in the IMF, World Bank and the UN. How much bigger do we need to get before the Remain camp open their eyes and see that we can actually cope on our own? One of the biggest points throughout this referendum has been that we won't be able to trade with the EU if we leave. However, do you really think this will happen? Germany and France sell more agricultural products and cars to us than we do to them. For example, do you really think that the German Chancellor is going to turn around to her car manufacturers and say, no, I want to make a point, you're not going to trade with them any longer? I think not. Also, China has trade agreements with both Switzerland and Iceland, countries with a lot smaller population than us and not as determined as us, showing that by leaving the EU, we will actually be able to make more trade agreements without the EU being there holding us back. Finally, leaving would allow us to spend our money on what's important to us, on services like the NHS. Currently, the EU controls £350 million of our money a week. The rebate we get back has been cut in the past and will no doubt be cut in the future. Some of this money does come back, but at least half the money we will never see again. Our money is spent footing the bills of the EU and spent by people that aren't emotionally invested in this country. We need to take back control of this money, take back control of our economy, and vote leave.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. 70 years ago, the path towards European integration began. The post-war Europe, plagued with unemployment, social trauma, and destruction on a scale never seen before, was willing to collaborate and to work together to prevent such atrocities from ever happening again. At a time when transportation costs were high and when regional trade blocs looked as though they might be the future, we voted to join a trading union between the rich Western European states. It was labelled a common market. But now, that common market is controlled by a man called Jean-Claude Juncker, a man that no one in this country has let and no one can remove. The only way of taking back control of our democracy is to vote to leave on June the 23rd. And it's for that reason that I believe that the EU has become too big. It has become too powerful. It has become too interfering. It makes 60% of our laws. When we've stood up against the European Council on 40 occasions since 2010, since David Cameron became Prime Minister, when David Cameron has entered that room and he stood up for British interests, he has lost on every single occasion. It's time for us to vote leave and take control this Thursday. But not only is the EU becoming an ever more anti-democratic bloc, it's also seeking to grow its influence further east. In response to the migration crisis, the European Commission has entered into a series of political negotiations with Turkey. Quite simply, we pay the Turkish government a few billion euros, and in return, they try to stop the refugees coming to Greece. It sounds fantastic, until you realise that they've also agreed to speed up Turkey's membership application to the European Union. And this, I believe, deserves greater time for contemplation. Because a country that bombs ethnic minorities in its own territory, which has 97% of its landmass in Asia, which is much poorer than even Romania and Bulgaria, and which would move the outer European border to Syria, to Iraq, and to Iran, must not be allowed to join the European Union. And you may even ask, what does this mean? What does it mean for me and my family? What does it mean for my country in the European Union? Well, I'll say this. Turkey would have the most MEPs of any member state. It would be the most powerful country in the Union. And 75 million people, 10% of whom are sympathetic to the fundamental goals of ISIS, will have visa-free access to Britain. Does this sound like a Europe of freedom, of security, or of democracy? Does it sound like the Europe that 80 million men, women and children paid the ultimate price in 2 bloody wars to secure? Does it sound like the Europe in which we should be raising our country, a Europe that we can play a leading role in the future? And that is the reason why I believe we need to vote leave. This is our once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take back control of our economy, to take back control of our money, and to take back control of our destiny. But more than that, it is the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to send a clear message to the political establishment who over the decades have given so much away. And that message is that we want our borders back. We want our democracy back. We want our country back. Thank you.